Hello everybody and welcome to our August live question and answer session for our garment makers. We have had a very busy day here in Yorkshire. We hope you've had a really successful day or are having a really successful day, depending on where you are in the world. We have got lots of good questions, which is wonderful. We've got one or two things to chat to you about that are coming relatively soon. David's off on holiday tomorrow. He's got a big family wedding on Saturday, so it's all happening here in Yorkshire. So David, where are people joining us from today?
Okay, hi everybody. Sorry, looking a bit like a rabbit in the headlights today. Who was first on today? Ali P, looks like you were on first. Hello from sunny Surrey. Anne Snellgrove from South Carolina, USA. Susan Jenkins from Burrs County Park in Lancashire again. We established that on Tuesday. Well done, Susan. Judith Locker from Staffordshire Moorlands. Cilla Moncrief. Judith Locker again. Sarah Runicles. Debbie Bolton. Corinne Curtis. You've got a question tonight, Corinne, I know. So welcome to everybody. Hopefully you can hear us loud and clear, and I think we're ready to go.
We are ready to go. Now, the reason that we've had such a busy day is that we have been filming a class on the peg bag, which was done for the Festival of Quilts, and I said to David, oh, we'll be able to do that on the Thursday before you go on holiday. David hasn't even packed his suitcase or anything yet, so I was unable to get the same fabric that I had used for the original peg bag, and so this is the one that I made in today's class that we've just finished filming, which is a Picasso inspired fabric. So we were debating as to whether Picasso would be happy or disgusted that we were using his artwork for peg bags, but it's actually really enjoyed filming it, and it has ended up being kind of more than you might imagine, really. The peg bag uses little plastic skirt hangers, and you take the clips off, and there you've got two pegs already once you get rid of those, and it's a really great support. And then lots of things like, you know, where does the opening go? You don't want this to kind of not hold its shape. Nice rounded corners so you don't get bits of fluff or leaves in there. Little bit of contrast in there. Everything's tidied up. Lots of things that we actually covered that made it really interesting. So I thoroughly enjoyed revisiting it. And so once David gets back from holiday, he'll get on and edit that, and it will be available for you should you want to make yourself an artistic for life, because it's going to be so well made, it's going to last you decades. Peg bag. Right, David, question. Oh no, Peter, we need to do the draw. Peter is... Oh yes, Peter's just come in, Peter. Then for those of you that were with us on Tuesday, Peter had spent a lot of the day fixing or trying to fix our washing machine, and he's done exactly the same today with no success. But we're not going to talk about it because that's a bit boring, isn't it? So yeah. He's a bit horrified at the price that he might have to pay to have it fixed. Anyway, our gift for two lucky people, two lucky members, is 4 reels of Gutterman thread in very useful black and white, and then a red one, and then a blue one. And this is the thread that is made from recycled polyester. So this is really about as friendly as it gets in terms of polyester thread. So the 2 lucky numbers we will pass to David. So anything you do want to tell us about Peter? Anything good and exciting happened today? No? You made a fruit compote this morning?
Oh yeah.
What, I don't know. I can't think of anything. Anyway, David's going to take the 2 numbers that Peter's just pulled out of the bag, and at the end we will let you know who our lucky winners are. You don't need to do anything. You just need to be a paid up member of Dressmaking with Philippa.
Okay, thank you, Philippa. You need to know we finished filming the class about 15 minutes ago, so it was probably 20 minutes now, but it wasn't very long ago. So we've been putting this together quite quickly, but we're ready and we're raring to go. So that's good. The first question is from Helen Milford, and there is a picture that goes with this, which I am queued up for today. And it says, hello Philippa and David, I bought some beautiful silk while visiting Vietnam and I want to use it to make a blouse following the blouse class. I'm sure French seams are the best option, but what would you suggest I do to finish the edge of the grown in facing, and what interfacing should I use? The silk is quite slippery, so any other tips would be appreciated. The pattern is laid out to make sure I bought enough fabric, and here is I'll show you the picture of that is the pattern that she's planning to make. So Philippa, any suggestions?
Okay, so yes, that looks very nice. You've got lots of variation there, haven't you, in terms of how you treat the neckline and whether you have it sleeveless or short sleeves or longer sleeves. I think the one in the middle that's got a slightly puffed sleeve would really suit the softness of that silk, but you might not have chosen to do that one. Now then, the grown on facing for the buttons and buttonholes. So there is the centre front, and then the pattern continues, and there is a mirror image that you fold back to give you the double thickness of fabric to support the buttons and buttonholes, and that is normally interfaced. Now we don't have a picture of your fabric, so I don't know whether it's slightly sheer or whether it is not see-through at all. I have two thoughts on that. I think that you could use a bias cut strip of fabric that was really quite I'm going to recap on that. Yeah, it has been quite a hectic day. Right, this is what I'm going to say. The grown on facing, I think you should use a bias cut piece of something like a very lightweight cotton lawn. So the grown on facing section, so from the fold line, the extension bit, I would make another pattern for that, and I would cut that in a cotton lawn on the bias, and I would put that right sides together with the grown on facing bit, and I would seam down the long edge and fold it back on itself, and then your interfacing and your grown on facing will be incredibly neat. It's the same principle as I do with the facing in the neck on the shift dress, which you definitely have got because it's class number 1 in the garment making series. So have a look at that, because that is the principle on that. That's what I would do with it. I would try and get a toning colour. So let's say, for sake of argument, your fabric is pink, I would try and get a very lightweight pink, and if you cut it on the bias, it will have that fluidity that you need, and it's not going to make the front of your garment really stiff. Now, the other class that I suggest you look at, particularly for cutting out, is the gowns and wrap class, because I make a gown in a polyester and then also in a silk, and I've got a lot of tips on cutting out and how you could go about doing that and getting a really accurate representation of the pattern, because the fabric does tend to shift and move. So do have a look at that as well. And I think, and yeah, there's sewing tips as well for sewing the silk in that class, so that's really useful for you. So just pop that on when you're doing something else, and then you can prick your ears up when you hear the relevant bits that you want to investigate. So good luck with that, Helen, and we look forward to seeing the garment and hearing how you get on with it.
Thank you. So the next question is from Debbie Smith, and I see, Debbie, you have said hello from sunny Lincolnshire today, so welcome to you. Debbie would like some advice on elastic, particularly for sleeves and cuffs. What width of elastic do you recommend, and what type? Do you sew it in place or simply thread it through a turned up edge, and how do you determine the length that's needed?
So Debbie, on the face of it, that seems like a very simple question, doesn't it? But there are multiple possibilities, and it very much depends on what you are doing and the fabric that you are using and the style of the garment. So let's just say, what have we got here? So I have got elastic in here, and it is elastic that is encased between the frill and the sleeve, and it is stitched with just regular straight stitch first, and then it's encased and overlocked. So that isn't something I've ever done myself, so that's a revelation to me. Okay, different things that you can do. So let's say you want to do a sleeve, and you are going to have a little frill beyond it, and so your elastic is going to be a little bit further up from the finished edge of the sleeve. To determine the length, what I would do is I would wrap it around the place where I wanted it to sit on my body. So it might not be here, it might be further up, and I would find out what felt comfortable, and then I would add maybe an inch on either end to get hold of as you are stitching it, and for an overlap. When I'm overlapping elastic, I tend to lap it like that. I tend not to stitch it and fold it back on itself. I tend to lap it like so and zigzag across it, but you can do it by hand. So you could do different things. You could choose a really quite a narrow elastic that was 1/4 of an inch or possibly even less, and you could quarter the elastic and put a pin at the midpoint, and then quarters, and do the same on the actual garment. You could do this with this sleeve flat. And then you could pin at the relevant places, and then stretch the elastic and zigzag it on, or straight stitch it on, easing the work through as you go. So that is one possibility. If it is just a straight edge to the bottom of the sleeve, there's no shape to it, it's not a very full sleeve, then yes, you could just turn the elastic up. Now you could make a casing. You could make the casing so the elastic went in the round. You could make the elastic so that it went in on the flat and it was joined in the seam. So you could do that. Again, if it was very fine fabric, a narrow elastic. If it was something quite substantial, a wider elastic. Sometimes if it's a shaped edge, then what I would do with that is I would make a casing using a bias strip of fabric that I'd pressed under the 2 long raw edges, and I would sew that in the round generally onto the bottom of the sleeve, and then I would turn it up and I would stitch most of it, but just leave a hole, an opening, so that the elastic could be threaded through. What else can I think off the top of my head? At the moment, my brain's a bit fried and I can't immediately think of something else. But don't just think that there is one answer to everything you're going to do. As you can already hear, it depends on the fabric, you know, fine fabrics, narrow elastic, thicker fabrics, wider elastic. What is the style? And just think about the most appropriate way to put the elastic in for that particular garment and shape of sleeve. Okay. There's a whole class there, isn't there? There really is.
An elastic class.
Yeah.
Okay, so hopefully some of that will be of help to you there, Debbie. Now I'm just looking at some of the comments. Christine Atkinson said that she didn't get notification, and I've just checked your account, Christine, and you unsubscribed from my emails, or certainly for some reason it's been unsubscribed. So the reason you didn't get notified was because we are no longer allowed to send you emails. So I will have a look at that. If you want us to sort it out, just send an email to Kelly and we will see what we can do to resubscribe you. But it's not straightforward because there are all sorts of rules about if you decide you don't want to get emails from us anymore, we can't just decide we want to send them after all. So but we can try and sort that out. Okay, the next question is from Dillis. And Dillis says, hi team, I know Philip has no intention of running a series about making underwear, and we've talked about this before. Philippa trained designing and making underwear, but has said I'll let you say why we're not going to do a class on it or anything. But Dillis would like to know, could I call on your extensive knowledge as to the best places to purchase elastic lace for the tops of pants and fold over elastic? Thank you for all you do and for being such an amazing team. And that's Dillis. So Philippa, where should she buy from, and why? Just let us know again why we're not doing an underwear class.
Why aren't we doing an underwear class, David? So I was a lingerie designer for many years, and I worked in the British clothing industry. And so Dillis, all our elastics, they were all dyed exactly to match the fabric. It was really quite a big. We used to have this special light box where we used to have to take the elastic and put it next to the fabric to make sure that it was within tolerance. And BHS Chess, who are one of our big customers, were always saying, no, it's not good enough. And we were saying, yeah, it's good. And so lots of it used to come from the Nottingham area, and it was manufactured in the UK, which is no longer the case. I do have some elastics that I've had for quite a long time. Elastic seems to me to be very variable. Some elastics that you bought in your stash seem good after a long time, and others just end up as like tape, don't they, with no elasticity left in them at all. So it isn't really something that I buy very often, but when I see any special elastic, if I'm in a show or happen to be, in some kind of haberdashery shop and there's an elastic that I think, oh, that's quite rare, I'll buy some of that. I do buy it. I do actually think that the best resource really is either eBay or Etsy. I tend to use them. You tend to be able to buy small quantities of quite a big range of different things for not too much money. But if anybody else does have any advice on that, we would very much like to hear it. I mean, Festival of Quilts, things like that, any of those stitch shows, it's always worth having a good route through and making yourself a little collection. But certainly eBay is where I go to for lots of different notions, and if I don't find it on eBay, I do look on Etsy. What I do find is that people who sell on eBay probably also sell on Etsy, and there's quite a lot of crossover between the two. So I hope that is of some help to you, Dilys. But Dilys very kindly sent me an email a little while ago, and in a previous live session, and it must have been garment making, and I'm really sorry I can't remember who originally said it, but one of our members suggested a book called The Parisians, which was written by a chap called Marius Gabriel, and it was about the life of Chanel, and I haven't had a chance to buy it or read it yet, but Dilys then went on to research further, and she bought a further book by the same author called The Designer, and it's a book about the life of Christian Dior, and she said that it was really mostly kind of historically accurate, but obviously with some artistic license. Anyway, she sent me down a rabbit hole there, because then I started to research Marius Gabriel, because it is a bit of a kind of romantic name, isn't it? And it is actually his pen name, and I can't now remember what he originally started doing. It was something fairly mundane, like a teacher or an accountant or something, but he decided that he was going to write romantic novels. It is a he. And for the Brits, and I don't think this is the same in America, and I don't even know if they're still about, but Mills and Boons is this incredible range of romantic novels for bored housewives. Is that like Peter's mum used to read them endlessly. She had endless Mills and Boons books, and then towards the end of her life, when she had dementia, she couldn't remember that she'd read them, so you could just feed her the same book repeatedly. Anyway, he started for Mills and Boons, and he was very successful, and so then he went on to write other novels. So I fully intend to read both of those, Dilys, if there are any left on the shelves after all you lot have had them. And my little tip for books is Abe Books. They usually have second-hand books at very good prices, so Abe Books is who I usually go to. So thank you for both of those interesting things to pass on, Dilys. We always appreciate your input. You're always very interesting. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Dilys. So the next question is from Leslie Smith, and Leslie has been working on her Chanel style jacket, and she says, I'm just about to start the third toile for my Chanel style jacket. I'm determined to get it right before cutting out the fabric, although she says that she could lose the will to live because it's taking a little while, I guess. She's using Vogue pattern 7975, which is this pattern here. Oh, Philippa's pulled it out as well.
Well done, David.
I have made lots of alterations to the pattern already, she says. The one I'm trying now is adding a larger bicep, and she says she must stop lifting weights. I have watched the class for altering the pattern for the blouse, but that only has one pattern piece. The jacket has two pattern pieces. If I need to add 2 inches in total, do I add ½ an inch to each side of both pattern pieces? This is for the bicep. I'm sure it is obvious to a regular dressmaker, and I know that you will have the answer to this. Hopefully this will be my last toile. Many thanks for the excellent classes, and that's Leslie Smith.
So Leslie, thank you for your question, and Leslie did come and see us at the Festival of Quilts, which was at the beginning of the month, and we chatted about her jacket there. So she's clearly been working on it since we were talking about it at the Festival of Quilts. I have to say, I'm sure you're not wrong with this, Leslie. You are a very accomplished sewer and have many hours of excellent sewing under your belt. 2 inches does seem like quite a lot, doesn't it? I think that you are working with Linton Tweeds, which is a fairly loose woven fabric, and I wonder whether you should add some additional fabric into the sleeve head area so that you could slash down and open out, and that because the fabric was so soft and malleable and easy to ease, that you would have slightly more fabric in the sleeve head, as well as adding to the seams of the two-piece sleeve, so that you are distributing that fullness actually more evenly around, so that it isn't just going to go into the seams. You're also going to get some of it coming over this part of the arm here, and then you've got additional fabric all the way around. I think we maybe ought to just chat a little bit more about this, and I'm going to ask you to forward to Kelly a photo of the actual fabric that you are using, and I would like to just have a little bit more of a think about it and just get back to you, because I do not want this to be such a kind of losing the will to live there. So Leslie, just leave it with me and send a picture of your fabric so that I can have a little bit more of a look and a little bit more of a think about it. You weren't expecting to be needed there, were you, David?
I haven't teed up the next picture yet, so let's tee up the next picture, which is from Jill, and Jill says, I hope you can help me. The elastic in my daughter's swimsuit has perished, and now the leg openings are too large, and I want to replace the elastic. First, I'm having difficulty in unpicking the cover stitching, and second, the original elastic seems to be an adhesive type, and let's just see if I've got the right picture. There we are, there's the pictures you've taken. To cut it, so the original elastic seems to be an adhesive type and is sticky and stiff. To cut this off would render the area in the crotch too narrow. So I don't know how to retrieve the situation. Any advice, please? And that's from Jill Taylor.
This is so specific, isn't it, Jill? I mean, the last thing we want is a baggy crotch or a narrow crotch. We want comfort and a feeling of security when you are in the water. If anybody watched the Olympics, there was a story of Tom Daley diving, not at these Olympics, but diving in and coming out with no swimming trunk. So we've probably all been there at some stage in our lives. Right, okay, so the cover stitch. You don't tell us whether you have a cover stitch machine or whether you are able to do cover stitch, and cover stitch is like overlocking, and it's a great way of applying elastic because it doesn't cut the fabric as it sews. Now then, when I was a lingerie designer, we didn't really do much in the way of leotards and swimsuits, but occasionally we would do that. And quite often it is a rubber elastic, so it's kind of a flat piece of rubber or the man-made equivalent rather than the ridged elastic that you might be more familiar with. In terms of unpicking your cover stitch, I am going to ask you to Google that, because there will be a video out there to show you how to unpick it. I can't really do this. I haven't got a sample here. So have a look at that, because that should help you. Now, what I suggest is that you Google rubber swimwear elastic or just swimwear elastic. Again, eBay is going to be a really good resource for that. And I did have a chance to have a look, and there's quite a lot comes up, and it's not really expensive. So we don't know that whether you can do cover stitch or not. Let's assume that you've just got a regular sewing machine. What I would buy is the Maraflex elastic thread. in industry we use what's called bulk thread, which is a crimped thread, and it's multiple filaments that are held together but not twisted together and have great elasticity, but it's unlikely that you're going to get hold of that. So use the Gutterman's Maraflex elastic thread, because that's going to be really helpful, so that when you sew your elastic on, it's got more give to it. And what I would do is, I mean, you'll have to kind of put the elastic around your daughter's leg, but I would try to determine the length of elastic that you need. And once you've got rid of the old stitching and the old elastic, I would do what I said about the cuff, and I would I would fold the leg in half, and I would find the half, and I would find the quarter, and I would do the same with the elastic, and I would pin it at those points. And initially, within the seam allowance, I would sew it on with a regular straight stitch, just flat, no fold, just inside the raw edge. So here's the raw edge, here's the raw edge of the fabric. The elastic is going to be stitched there. You're going to stretch it as you sew it with a long straight stitch with the elastic thread top and bottom. Then you've got it held in place. Then you'll be able to fold that back to the inside, and then again pin in those 4 places, and you'll then be able to either zigzag or use one of the overlock stitches on your sewing machine. You'll have to look into your sewing machine manual on that to find out, and you will be able to then stitch a second time, holding it and stretching it and pulling it through with a stitch that's going to cover it. Might be a triple zigzag, could be another stitch, but that would be the way to go with it. So that is my suggestion. I do think it is doable if you do a little bit more research and you get hold of the right elastic and you do follow those various steps. So good luck with that, Jill, and we want to know how you get on. We don't need a photo of your daughter in the swimsuit unless she particularly wants to show something off.
Okay, thank you for that, Philippa. It seems we go in waves, don't we? And it seems to be an elastic evening tonight.
It is elastic.
That's the third elastic question we've had. I don't think we've got any more, but I can't remember one way or the other. Okay, thank you for that. So hopefully that helps you, Jill. The next question, a comment from somebody. Pat Jenkins says that Mills and Boon is the same as Harlequin in the USA.
Oh, thank you. That's good to know. Harlequin.
So we are we're educating ourselves in lots of things tonight. The next question is from Caroline Martin, and Caroline says, I'm making a very simple kimono, a series of rectangles with French seams. She says she's only just started the series, but she's very much enjoying the learning. The method to join the French seams is to join the shoulder seams, then attach the sleeves, and then French seam the body and the sleeves into one. But, she says with capital letters, the joining of the rectangles results in a near right angle at the underarm, which really doesn't sit well with a French seam. Do you have any suggestions as to how to avoid the inevitable pulling and tightening when stitching the second part of the French seam? And that's Caroline Martin.
So yes, Caroline, I have all the answers. Actually, Caroline, you are down as Caroline Martin. So there's lots of double W, which is great. Okay, so now then, we do have this illustrated in, again, our gowns and wraps class, and the wrap that I make in the silk, I do exactly this, and I also do a very similar thing with the pocket in the side seam of this garment with French seams. But for those of you who don't have that class, or you want me to kind of explain it a little bit further, with a French seam, the way I do it is wrong sides together, and initially I sew a 3/8 of an inch wide seam. Now with the kimono, so you're going to have, this is the sleeve and this is the body, you are going to sew here and here, okay? Now what I do when I get close to the point where I'm going to pivot, so maybe about 1/2 inch from the pivot point, I will either reduce the stitch length so it's very small, or I'll do a little bit of back stitching on this side and on this side, so that both sides of the pivot point are reinforced. Now when that seam is stitched, it is trimmed down to less than 1/4 of an inch, and then let me get this right, the right sides go together and you sew 1/4 of an inch seam, and the raw edges are encased with the second lot of stitching. And when you come to that pivot point, when you are doing your trimming, before you sew the second line of stitching, because you've reinforced it, you can clip right into that angle, clip right into it, and then when you turn everything through to press and do the second line of stitching, it will all lay perfectly flat. And you can find that, as I said, in the gown and wraps class. So and any suggestions how to avoid inevitable pulling and tightening? Yes, so that answers all of that question. You will be good with that. So there you go, Carolyn.
Thank you, Philippa, for that one. Okay, so the next question is from Sarah Basham. And Sarah says, we've got a picture that goes with this one. And here is the picture. And Sarah says she's got herself completely confused with this collar pattern. She's trying to make sure that all the little foxes are the right way up on both sides of the collar. And she says, hope you've all had a good summer. Best wishes, Sarah Basham. So Philippa, can you help us to get the foxes the right way up on both sides?
Yes, it does look a little bit tricky, doesn't it? Because as I look at the image that you have given us, it appears to me that the foxes, so you've got the, can we just see the image again, please, David? So, yeah.
To the left.
Yeah, so the selvage is at the bottom of the image and the foxes are running at right angles to that. So, yeah. you let's have a look. You have got left and right. So as I look at the foxes, there are foxes with their heads coming in from the left and foxes with their heads coming in from the right. Okay, so you are not going to cut this collar out on the grain line that is suggested parallel to the selvage. You are going to have to cut it out at a 90-degree angle to that. Now, if you have got a dress stand or a mannequin, what you can do is you can place your fabric in that orientation so that it runs around the neck and you can see what the actual fabric looks like. And it may be that you're really happy with it with just one strip of fabric, okay, because you have got foxes going left and right. But you may decide that you want to put a centre back seam into the collar so that you can more easily get exactly what you want. I'm pretty sure you can just cut it out in one piece. Okay, so once you've got if you haven't got a dress stand, just put the fabric around you and stand in front of the mirror with the fabric in the orientation that you want it, and then get your collar piece and just pin it in the direction that you want it to be, and then you've got it held temporarily in place, just a couple of pins, and then you'll be able to do the fine tuning when you get back to the table. So I'm just looking at David, does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Okay. I've just done a really similar thing with a shirt that I've just made for Daniel, which we're going to show you later on, but I don't think it's teed up and ready to go yet, is it? No, don't worry. Yeah, don't worry. I'll refer back to it when we come to that. So yeah, just always sort of drape it on yourself in the way that it will be in wear, and then just place the pattern on it. And as I say, you have the option of putting a centre back seam in there. If you do put a centre back seam in, don't forget to add seam allowance on both sides of the actual collar so that you've got sufficient fabric for that centre back seam. So there you go. Hope that helps. Let us know, Sarah.
Presumably the little foxes are always looking up towards the concave, towards the top rounded one. So as long as the little foxes are looking up towards the rounded one, that should work. I'm not sure whether that was the question. Oh, I'm not sure whether that was the question you were asking.
Well, I think it's a two-part question because it is about the grain line. She's going to put it on a different grain line and having the fox the right way up. But if she's got the fabric on her body, then she can see it's right. So
okay, good.
Hopefully that will work.
Good. So the next question is from Anita Bargewell. In fact, it's not really a question. It's a comment really, or she's showing us some of her work, and haven't got this teed up. I will tee this one up. I've never got anything teed up, have I? So here's the. So here are three. And there's another couple of pictures. She says it's variations on my shift dress, including the side pockets, patch pockets, binding and a full bust adjustment. And she says I can now go to my pattern and just cut it out. Thank you, Philippa, and that's regards from Anita.
And can I just before you move on? So, David, do you have the other picture to show which pattern it is, and then we'll come back to this photo if you don't mind. So the actual pattern is this Maven dress pattern. I do actually have that pattern, and it's a nice pattern. It's got a lovely neckline to it. But how fantastic that Anita has done her own neckline variations. If we just go back to the three dresses, well, top and two dresses that she's made there, what we can see is she's got that lovely pocket from the patch pocket class. You recognise that? Yeah. And she's got piping in there, and she's added that light trim on the sleeve, and she's drafted her own Peter Pan collar there. For some reason, I don't even know how David even knows what a Peter Pan collar is, but apparently David hates a Peter Pan collar. I mean, why? What's so offensive about it? A Peter Pan collar is one of my favourite. Peter, do you love a Peter Pan collar?
I'm saying yes. That's a good answer.
Yeah. And lovely binding, finishing off edges there. So, Anita, you have achieved everything that we hope for with our course. Your skills have improved dramatically in terms of knowing what to do. You have great confidence and obviously a huge amount of success, and what a lot of variety from a single pattern. So that for us is a delight to see, and we are really happy that you're having such great success and you've got so many lovely things to wear.
Right. Okay. I have to be very careful what I say in front of Philippa. So.
Yeah, I'm like an elephant. I never forget, do I, Peter?
So the next question is from Helen Geach, and Helen says, interestingly, I've been given some skirts and trousers, but they have no pockets. Is there a way to fit some without ruining the garment, please? And that's from Helen Geach. And we did look at Helen, and she does have the pocket classes. I think that's what we said, didn't we? And she has got some experience of how to make pockets onto a garment from scratch. But for ones that she's been given, what advice would you give her, Philippa?
Okay, so you again, another question that has many possibilities with it, and without seeing the garments and how the garments are constructed, it's a little bit difficult for me to give you some exact advice, because there will be different things that you can do according to the garment. So for example, if it is a skirt and it's got a side seam that has been overlocked on two edges, sewn and pressed open, it's very easy to unpick that side seam and insert an inseam pocket, and the inseam pocket class would show you how to do that. So that type of thing is quite easy. It is still possible if a side seam has been stitched and then overlocked with the two seams, the front and back, overlocked together. It is still possible. It's just a little bit more tricky, but again, the inseam pocket class will help you with that. But for things like other garments where it's not as easy to get into a seam to insert a pocket in the seam, then the welt type pocket is perfect for that. So let's say that you had a skirt and you wanted to put two pockets in the front. You could put welt pockets that were slightly forward of the side seam. They could be straight, they could be angled, and the pocket bag can be inserted into the garment without having to put it into a side seam. And we do actually actually know, Helen, that you haven't watched the welt pocket class. So we know everything about all of you. You have watched the other classes, so yeah. But a welt pocket, I mean, you do tend to think of it as a jacket pocket on the horizontal, but there is absolutely nothing to stop it being a vertical or a slanted pocket that you put your hands in both trousers and skirts. So do have a look at that. And again, many possibilities, but another watch of those classes might give you some ideas. And of course, patch pocket, it's just going back to Anita's dress with the patch pocket from the patch pocket. That's dead easy, isn't it? Adding patch pockets to the front and the back of garments. So you've got a whole range of possibilities there.
Okay, thank you for that. So the next question is from Debbie Bolton, and she's given us a picture. I think I've teed this one up. I've been collecting 4-yard pieces for dresses and tunics for a while. Even though they are 100% cotton, I'm used to ironing. I look forward to getting back into making dresses and blouses with all the new methods I am sure I will learn from you. Do you have a favourite source for dressmaking fabric?
No,
so, Philippa, where do you get your dressmaking fabric from?
I go under the table. There is
years of collecting.
Yeah, every time you see a piece, buy it. People gift me fabric as well. I've had a lot of lovely pieces of fabric given over the years. I do remember years ago when I was a student and I was training to be a clothes designer. I was at Manchester for 4 years training, and there was this young man. I don't know how I met him really. He was part of a group and he was training to be a tailor. So he wasn't part of the college. He was training to be a tailor, but he was a bit of a lad and he had a real shine for me. And he would keep coming with these lengths of fabric, and he brought me the most gorgeous piece of black wool Barathea, British made. It was amazing, but I didn't really fancy him. So luckily for you, really, Peter, or unluckily for you, but he did give me some people are always giving me stuff. Right, okay. I mean, you're obviously in the States because you're working in yards, and I always think 3 meters, 4 yards is always a good amount. You can always do something with that, a dress, a blouse, a shift dress, something like that. So yeah, that's a good amount to be buying. I have to say that Liberty of London is my most favourite fabric resource. I mean, I just love the shop, but they have such a big range of all types of fabric, and I absolutely am not averse to using furnishing fabric for making outerwear, you know, jackets, all kinds of things. I quite often use furnishing fabric, often for evening wear as well. Some, you know, the richer kind of brocade type furnishing fabrics. But Liberty is particularly known for its cotton lawn, isn't it? But they do make a really wide range of fabrics from other fibres in different ways. It does tend to be seasonal, but if you go in the winter, you can get some gorgeous wool fabrics. You get corduroy and needle cord. They have heavyweight silks. They have all kinds of things. So I do always, whenever I go in there, there is never an occasion when I go in and think, oh gosh, I don't want to buy anything in here. But basically, I'm always on the lookout. And if I see something that I think is nice and I could make something from 3 meters, 4 yards, it's a good length to pop in your stash. So that is my answer to you, Debbie. And Debbie, you've got some lovely fabrics there. We look forward to seeing some of your garments.
Okay, thank you. Now there's a question, because we said we knew what you've been watching. Somebody has asked, it says Stephen Buckley on here, so I'm not sure whether, it's probably not Stephen Buckley, it's probably your husband's account or something like that. I'm not sure. We have several Buckleys, so I'm not sure which Buckley you are, but she says, do we know how many times that you actually watch the videos? And the answer is no. I can only tell the date of the first time that you watched, or if you've watched it at all. We just have on the software that we use, it just for each video.
I'm not sure that's true, David.
Do you think you can tell how many times?
We know when you looked at it.
Oh, we know when. Yeah, we know when, but I don't think we know. We only know the first time. We don't know how many times. So it's Jill. It's Jill Buckley. There's several Buckleys, so I didn't want to guess the wrong one. Yes. So so the answer to the question is no, we don't, because she says she watches her classes many times and we can't tell that. Okay, so the next question is from Susan Hotham, and Susan says she's asked several questions. Please can Philippa tell us about some of her real light bulb moments? She says her last 3 have been sparked by Philippa, and they were, first of all, that there's a 5/8 of an inch mark on the stitch plate, so you know where to stop sewing in order to turn a corner. The second one for her was that she doesn't have to do a pattern in the order they tell you to. In other words, you can get the collar ready first. And finally, the third one for her was how to cut out a collar with a centre back seam to avoid bulk at the corners. So Philippa, have you had any light bulb moments? And then Susan has very cleverly asked and slipped another couple of questions in. Have you had any major catastrophes that you've managed to transform into happy accidents? And what is your favourite and least favourite part of the sewing process? And she says that she knows people who enjoy cutting out, and she loves doing the bindings and the necks and sleeves because it tidies up all the messy edges. And that's from Susan.
Okay, so Susan, a proud Yorkshire woman there. For those of you who are in the States or other places, people from Yorkshire are known for being very thrifty. Do you think that's true? Do you think... My husband's incredibly thrifty, and not as bad as he used to be. You notice I said thrifty. Okay, so light bulb moments. I really, because we're actually, although we were filming until very late this evening, I was getting David to read the questions out to me as I was doing the stitching on the peg bag, so that I could be thinking about them. But he did say, I'm not sure that I want to read them out to you because I want you to concentrate on the sewing and the filming and not be thinking too far ahead. But when he asked me that, I really struggled to kind of think what the light bulb moments are. I think I probably have lots of little light bulb moments in thinking, how am I going to do this? And then working out how to do it. I mean, that is perhaps my most pleasurable thing, is having the idea and thinking, what do I do to make this work? I always remember, I may have said this before, but I had a really wonderful needlework teacher, Mrs. Tong. So this was from the age of 14 to 16. And I'd be about 16 and I was making a polyester blouse, and it had some kind of opening in the seam for the cuff, and I was doing a French seam, and so I just worked out this method. I didn't ask any questions, I just worked out this method of how to finish off the edges of the placket before sewing the French seam. And I can always remember Mrs. Tong standing at my side watching me very intently, and I said, am I doing this wrong? So she said, no, not at all, I'm just watching to see what you're actually doing. So even from quite a young age, I was working out how to make it work. So that's probably what I like the most. Has Philippa had any catastrophes? Yeah, I have, but with quilt making actually more than garment making. And I'm always working to a deadline, and there are two particularly stories, but they're for quilters question time. But one of them was when I was doing a miniature quilt, and I stippled it with minute stippling for about 2 days, literally, and I had about 4 days to get this thing finished, and it was drawing in and distorting the shape, and it was all this like, I'm never going to manage to get this finished. And one of the things my husband has taught me, many things my husband has taught me, was just act like a grown-up, will you? For God's sake, just act like a grown-up. So instead of just bursting into tears, he'll be laughing at this and throwing it in the corner, it was act like a grown-up, get it unpicked and see what you can do with it. And I did manage to resolve it. Least favourite, don't have a least favourite really. I always get a bit nervous about buttonholes, which can be, you know, done all this lovely work and you can mess it up with buttonholes. But no, I think the thing that I have learned is, and it's true, it's kind of it's the positive side of sloppy dressing in a sense really, in that you can put any fabric together with any fabric. You can mix it up, you can add seams wherever you want, you can do anything you like to make it work, and it's all good. So I really try to live by those rules, and yeah, you know, if it's not fun, there's no point. I absolutely love sewing, absolutely anything. I would be here all the time if I could be. So thank you for a lovely question, Susan.
Okay, Philippa, I've also heard you saying if you don't like something, change the way you think about it. And
that's Peter.
Is that a Peter one,
yeah,
is it?
Yeah.
So, so that's
I will just very quickly tell that story. Years and years ago in Saudi, I think it was in Saudi, but anyway, I was making this quilt for an exhibition, and it had literally hundreds of thread ends to sew, knot and sew in, and I mean literally hundreds. And Peter came home from work and he said, how are you getting on with that quilt? Because there was a deadline, as there always is. And I said, oh, I've got all of these ends to finish off, because everybody says ends are a pain in the neck, don't you? So you believe them. And he just looked at me and he said, I think you need to rethink how you feel about that. And I thought, do you know, you're absolutely right. This is really lovely. I sit here in this lovely peace and quiet doing this nice meditative job, cleaning up this quilt. This is really enjoyable, and I've enjoyed it ever since. So thank you for that, Peter.
There's nothing good nor bad, but thinking makes it.
So Peter says there is nothing good or bad, but thinking makes it so, which will be Shakespeare. Yeah.
Okay, a couple of comments have come in. So for those of you that can't read the comments, Deb somebody suggests Josephine's in Portland. They include Liberty of London fabric.
Nice.
Somebody else says they buy a lot on the internet. You can order swatches if you need to be specific. Blackbird Fabrics in California. Mood Miss Matatabi in Japan are, this is Beth Fitch, are her favourites. Somebody else, Nangelika, says my light bulb moment was realising that the width of a tape measure is exactly 5/8 of an inch. And Debbie Bolton says when she was 15 she made a summer dress with a directional pattern, and yes, half of the dress was upside down. So
okay, so half of the dress wasn't upside down, half of the fabric was running in the wrong direction.
Well, presumably, yeah.
Yeah. Thank you for all of those comments and suggestions. That's all really useful. We really like to tap into all of your knowledge.
Okay, so next question is from Maggie Rooney, and Maggie says, what thread will be the best to use with velvet? This will be the first time of sewing with that fabric.
Okay, so again, Maggie, many possibilities according to the fabric that you are using and what you are going to do with it. So velvet covers a huge range of fibres. So it might be a lightweight silk velvet, it might be a very heavy duty. Can you just pass me that red velvet on that roll, please, Peter? It might be a really heavy duty cotton velvet, it might be a stretch velvet, it could be all kinds of things. You know, it might be a pair of trousers that need a really strong crotch seam, it might be a floaty dress that doesn't need very much in terms of strength in the seams because they're not going to be under a huge amount of tension. This is actually a piece of velvet, and it's furnishing fabric velvet, and a gentleman recovered a stool with me, and I just happened to get out the remnant the other day. I have never seen such thick quality velvet in my entire life. It is almost like an animal's fur. It is amazing, and I would sew that with a general purpose polyester thread because it needs strength, because it is so thick and strong. But if if it was a silk velvet, say for example, and it was a very evening type dress, something quite loose, I would use the Gutterman silk thread for that. So I can't give you a specific answer. If it was a stretch velvet and it had some elastane in it, then I might use the Maraflex Gutterman's stretch thread as well. So hopefully you can pull out from that what to choose for the particular fabric and the garment you are making, but you can see that there is no one answer. But I would tend not to use cotton thread because for garment making, I think that if you're going to use cotton thread, you need a really short stitch length, and you don't want that with velvet. Just while I'm thinking about that, reduce the pressure on your presser foot if you find that it's crushing the pile. And when you are pressing it, you need a scrap piece of velvet on your ironing board with the pile uppermost, and any seam that you are going to press, you're going to put it into the scrap piece of velvet so that the piles mesh together, and then you won't flatten the pile on the actual seam that you are pressing. Okay,
thank you. So the next question is from, we're getting through them. We've got about three or four questions more to go, and then we will do the answer to the, we've got an extra sheet of paper on there, Philippa. So the next question is from Isla Robert, and Isla says, I would like to know what size of stitch to use on garments. I know there are lots of layers if there are lots of layers to use a bigger stitch size. I always do a test first on actual fabric and judge what I think will work, but I'm keen to know if there is more to it than this. I normally use cotton, linen or wool fabrics, and that's from Isla.
Okay, Isla, there's a theme tonight about kind of multiple answers to questions, really. Again, there is no one answer to this. And within all of the classes, I will generally tell you what the machine settings are and what the stitch length is that I'm using, and hopefully I will explain to you why I'm choosing a particular stitch length. I mean, I find it, I meant to, I've got a pair of bloomers somewhere that are Victorian, that are machine sewn, but with the tiniest stitch, using cotton thread, obviously, because there wasn't any polyester thread in those days. I think that stitch length increases in bought garments because it's faster for the machinist to sew, it's cheaper, and actually uses less thread. If you think the more stitches you have, the more the thread is kind of sinks into the layers and is twisted or looped together, the more thread you will use. And if you look at inexpensive garments, you'll find that it's a long stitch length. I think the thing to do is, more important than stitch length, is to have really good tension and to sew a little sample seam on the scrap fabric of the same fabric that you are using to make the garment, and really pull at it excuse me, to see if it is grinning and how strong it is. But generally I would tend to use a shorter stitch length on finer fabrics, and as you say, a longer stitch length on heavier weight fabrics. But I might alter the stitch length, you know, depending on what I'm doing, where the seam is, how much tension it's under, how the fabric is performing as I stitch it. So I think there are kind of multiple possibilities there, not just about stitch length, also about good tension and pressure on your presser foot, if you can alter that as well. So it sounds like you're already really kind of doing it without really kind of analysing what you're doing. You're just doing it naturally, really. So just as always, a little test is a really good idea, and there are no hard and fast rules. Thank you, David. Okay,
that's great. So the next question, or it's not a question, this is from Jan Smith.
Is this the last one?
No, there's two more to go.
Okay, because I quite wanted to finish on that one because it's such a lovely thing.
Let me ask a different one then. So the next question is not from Jan Smith, it's from Patricia Jenkins. And Philippa hasn't got this, so she's going to do this one blind. Hi Philippa, is there a difference with overlocker threads and threads that you use for general sewing? Clothes and quilts. I like to use the larger combs and notice some say overlocker threads and some don't.
Okay, so on the whole, if it is just overlocking, it will probably be a poorer quality thread. It's not always the case, because overlocking can be done to create the entire seam, or it can be done and used as a neatening. And when it is done and used as a neatening, there is no tension on that stitching. It is just enclosing all the raw edges, so it doesn't need to have such good performance as overlocking thread that is actually making the seam. So there will be a huge range within what is described as overlocking thread. But in a factory situation, the bigger, not that this is as big, the actual factory cones will be much bigger, simply because, you know, they're getting through masses of thread. They don't want to be continually changing the thread. But again, they will have different qualities of thread. So I think it's very hard to know what you're getting if it just says overlocking thread. You do kind of need to see it. A cheap overlocking thread, which is just really for the neatening, will be very wispy and maybe a bit lumpy and uneven. A higher quality overlocking thread will be much smoother, and when you actually come to break it, it shouldn't snap really easily. It should have some strength to it. So again, it is experience that will tell you what you've got by seeing, feeling, testing, stretching, and all the rest of it. And it very much depends on the end use of it. I happen to be in Boys, which is our local department store. I'm always talking about Boys, and they have a thread on this side of cone, and it's called Moon Thread, and people have mentioned it to me before, and it's very inexpensive, but it's really quite irregular, so it would be perfect for a domestic overlocker, because you could buy 3 or 4 threads in a colour for a particular garment, not adding greatly to the expense of making the garment, but you wouldn't want to use it for the actual construction of your regular straight stitch seams. So there are differences, but again, it is a huge range. Now that just leads me on to say, and we did chat about this on Tuesday with the quilt makers, we are going to do a live class, which is going to be called Fibres, Fabrics and Filaments. It will be recorded, so you'll be able to buy it and watch it live, but if you can't watch it live, you can buy it and it will go into your library. It will go into your library whether you watch it live or not. But I'm going to talk about fabrics and threads and the fibres and their properties and what you use and when you use it, to give you a much greater understanding of cotton and silk and wool and rayon in terms of fabrics and in terms of fibres. And we are planning at the moment to do that on the 1st of October, and we will let you know more details about that as and when we have them. We need to let David have his holiday first. Okay, so that is one of the things that is coming in terms of new classes, in addition to the peg bag class.
And we will be sure to email you as soon as we've got all the details worked out. We will be sure to email you. Okay, the second to last question is from Corinne Curtis, and Corinne says, I don't have a dressmaking dummy or the room to put one, and I still struggle with adapting patterns to take account that my back size is probably 2 sizes smaller than my front size. Waists are not too bad for adjusting, but can you break down the steps that you might go in deciding what size patterns to start with when you've got a different front size and back size, and what order to do any pattern adjustments for anything where she wants a nice upper body fit? And she says she lives alone and she sews alone, so she just has to do the fitting by herself by making and trying on toiles. She hasn't got the mannequin or anyone else to pin it on her. So Philippa, have you got any suggestions that might help Corinne?
Yes, and there's quite a lot of. Can I just borrow that sheet, just so that, thank you, so that I can just, because there's a lot of parts to your question, Corinne. Right now, I often fit myself. I tend not to use my tailor's dummy, my mannequin, for fitting. I tend to use it for putting things together, perhaps draping, you know, actually sewing the garment, but not about fit. I tend to fit on myself. Peter occasionally will pin for me, but not really very often. And what I think is really important in that sense is that you have really good full length mirror. And in an ideal world, you would have a full length mirror on the wall, and you maybe also would have some kind of cheval mirror. It doesn't have to be really big or take up a lot of space, that you can position so that you can see the back of yourself in the mirror, because you've got two mirrors working together. I mean, in an ideal situation, yeah, you would have that kind of three mirrors, and the side mirrors you could pull out and so on. So I don't know what you've got in terms of mirror, but I think that is really important. And I know from myself that I just know the alterations that I need to make, because, you know, I know my body and I know a bit of pattern cutting. So you're probably already starting with the kind of knowledge of what you need to do. I don't really think it matters about the order that you do things, but when you are saying, so for example, that your back is 2 to 3 sizes smaller than your front, so are you telling us that you've got a tummy? Have you got a rounded tummy? Maybe you've got a rounded tummy and quite a flat bottom, and so you need to add extra fabric in for your tummy. So we have alterations for a rounded tummy, for example. I'm just trying to kind of work out what is needed here in the skirt class, in the jeans class, possibly in the trouser class. So if you knew that your biggest major alteration was for your, if you have one, a rounded tummy, that would be what I started with. I mean, I think that you can do a lot by choosing the right pattern in the first place. And you know, Vogue patterns are quite good in that they often have this little symbol on the back that shows a kind of a graphic symbol for the type of body. So whether you're a triangle with broad shoulders and slim hips, whether you're boxy and square, and it'll tell you what they think the pattern is, what type of body they think the pattern is suitable for. I do think that we can all, and myself included, can get a bit kind of stuck in, we think this silhouette works for us. You know, I have a waist, and so I tend to like short jackets and things that fit into the waist. But when we did the shift dress, you know, I never wore a shift dress. When we did the shift dress, I loved the shift dress. It looked really good. I thought, why haven't we wearing shift dresses for all this time? So it's worth going into shops and trying on styles that you might not normally choose, just to see how they actually look on that. So I think mirrors are really important. I don't think that there is an order that you should choose. I think that you already know what the biggest areas are that you need to work on. I also tend to fit on my own, and I think you just build up knowledge the more that you do, really. And I understand that the fourth badly fitting toile is really disheartening. I don't really know what else to say on that. Oh, help me, David, help me, Peter. What have I missed? I don't like me to be stuck for words, really, with them. I mean, I think that is what I would do, really. What I think is, some people are really good at it and some people are not so good at it, and I don't know where you fall within that. Some people are really not good at recognising what their body shape is, and then even if they do recognise that, you know, you've got to really think about, what part of my body is it that I need to change, and where is that on the pattern, and how do I do that on the pattern? We do have a wealth in our index, but I think you need to think really, you need to analyse yourself and really think about you and your body. What is it that needs changing, and where exactly does it need changing on the body? I mean, already kind of slightly touched on that with Leslie and the sleeve. You know, where are we going to add that extra bicep? We maybe don't just want it in two places, maybe we need it all the way around. Do you see that's the same kind of thinking? So I'm sorry that I haven't given you an exactly, you're going to do this, this and this, but I think you're working very well towards what you should be doing, and that you will continue to improve with that.
Okay, thank you, Philippa. Hopefully that will help you, Corinne. The final...
Oh, can I just show Dan's?
Oh, yes, sorry. We've got something else to look at.
So I have been doing a little bit of sewing for my son Daniel and his girlfriend Agnes. I tend to do more for Agnes because she's a girl, really. But they do Lindy Hop dancing, 1940s big band dancing, and they often go on a dancing weekend. And so I've just made them some vintage items to go with. And I think, what have we got coming up? So Daniel, I just made this shirt, this 1940s pattern, and I found the pattern on Etsy. It was available as a pattern or a download, and yes, I could have drafted it, but I particularly wanted it for the collar because I wanted to really see how big the collar was, and also do really love a vintage pattern because I think the instructions are really well done, and they are just for a domestic sewing machine. So, you know, it was a time when everybody was sewing, and so there's a lot of knowledge there that has been lost. But if we go back to Dan's shirt, is it just a plain shirt? I wanted you to see the exact matching of the centre front, so the design there, and also there is a breast pocket on either side, which you probably can't even see where it is because I have matched it exactly. I'll show you how to do that in the rainwear class. But that shirt, I bought 2 meters. It was relatively wide, but I hadn't really thought about it, and it was directional, so I just managed to squeeze it out. But I did have to put a seam in the inner yoke. The yoke was made out of 2 pieces, a centre back seam in the yoke. And pertinent to the collar question, yes, I very carefully cut the collar so that the direction of the collar was correct with the rest of the shirt. However, the under collar is going the incorrect way because I only had enough fabric to do that, but nobody's ever going to see it, so it worked perfectly. And then Agnes's little dress, which is a green dress, came from this McCall's pattern, which is a reproduction of a 1940s pattern. I actually made it in a polyester because it was a really nice weight, so when she's dancing it will have it'll be substantial, but it will also have a nice flow to it. But also she can wash it and just hang it up to dry, and with anything like that that is an off the shoulder garment, there's always a problem of hanging it, isn't there? You have to put tapes in or something like that. So my suggestion, and I gave her not one that Quilters Question Time or Garment Makers had paid for, but a skirt hanger so that she could hang the dress from the waist, and so the front just flopped forward, and then it was no difficulty in hanging it. And so they were at a dance weekend this weekend and wore those garments. I really like making them for them. It's lots of fun. So our final little show and tell for this evening is to Jan. Yes.
So yes, Jan says Jan saw us at the Festival of Quilts. And Philippa asked her to send in a picture of her. She's been making the Chanel style jacket, and she says, so we've got the picture here. So there's Jan in her Chanel style jacket. She says that since the photo, she's put a button on each of the pockets and put the chain in. So she didn't have time to take another photo, but that looks like you've made a great job of that, Jan.
Yeah, Jan, I'm so pleased you sent the picture in because it looks fantastic, and I wanted to save it to the end to finish with because you made such a lovely job of it. I mean, it fits you like a dream. It looks so well made. Your sleeves, all of your seams, everything really professional. It's not a button finish at the centre front, it is a zipper, but everything looks like it matches absolutely perfectly, and just popping that little bit of chain into the hem will just help that hang just that little bit better. So the most beautiful job. I am sure you're absolutely delighted with it and that you will get lots of great compliments. I hope you go on to make more because you really made such a lovely job. It's so professional. I'm really proud of you, so well done. What a lovely image to finish on. And then our final lovely thing to finish on are our 2 winners. So the 2 thread winners, Peter.
The lucky winners are Kate Richards and Carol Gilbert.
So, Kate and Carol, congratulations. Some maybe not very exciting, but extremely useful thread coming your way. David will be in touch to find out your home addresses, and then we will get those sent off to you. So, really good questions this evening, lots of variety. Really enjoyed the elastic questions. I like being stretched, ha ha. Okay, so keep all your wonderful questions coming, and if you think of something next week, jot it down so that you'll remember, and next time we ask for your questions to be sent in, you can send forward that one to us. So peg bag class coming your way before too long, and also our fibres, fabric and filaments class coming your way. So exciting things in the pipeline. So from all of us here, Peter, David and myself, thank you very much for joining us. It's always a really fun evening, and after a very long day we can be very happy that it's all been really good. And yes, David's earned his holiday, and I might have a little bit of a lie in tomorrow, but Peter is going running 10 miles at 9:15, but he will be on his own. I'm not going to join him. Anyway,